cultural participation or non-participation, I don't know. It's going to be subdivided into two parts. There will be two papers, and then a round table that will be chaired by Victoria, because I don't know the people who participate to this round table, and I cannot even pronounce their names. They are so complicated. How do you pronounce Patxi? Pachi? Pachi, okay, so I was not too bad. Okay, the first paper is by Michel Hambersin, who used to be a banker teaching finance in the same university as where I used to teach, but his real hobby is and interest is in music and opera. I don't know whether you sing also, Michel,
no,
or you
so
do not sing. Okay, you have 20 minutes and 5 minutes for discussion.
Non. Allez, on revient. Celui-là. Eh bien, il est là. Okay, thank you. Merci. So here we are. First of all, maybe I would like to tell you that Is it better so? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I would like to make a first announcement. This is not the end result of a research. It's exactly the reverse. It's the plan of a research that should have to be conducted on a point which is the hot potatoes on the agenda of cultural economics at the moment, is the impact of the new technology on the way we have to assess cultural economics. So, first of all, in which kind of socio-economic framework do we live? We know that there is a very strong decrease in the educational practice. We know that we have more and more a lack of interest in new generation. This means that the audience of today is not going to be replaced by a further audience. Third of all, we live with problem of budgetary restriction in all of our countries. So this means culture is at risk. If we don't find new ways to approach it, we will be faced with terrible troubles in the coming years. What can new technology provide? To my view, there are at least 4 elements or 4 sectors where the impact can be very important. The first of all is the creations. Or you create new art products, or you create products which are using art products another way round, and that helps them to be distributed. Second point is the actual distribution of products. Then is, of course, a terrible source of development. I just take the example of the net, but many of them can be used. We were speaking about the games this morning. That's another one. So we have a lot of things to be done. And then we do that, and when you observe what is being made in the various sectors of the cultures in the last year, the end result you have is to say, why do not we apply the same techniques to education? So education is the third sector of development. And then the fourth one is the way the public authority may control the use of public funds. We know that in our country, I'm not speaking about the Anglo-Saxon attitude, but in our country, culture is living on the base of subsidies. One of the most important points for the subsidized power is to say, what do they do with our money? I think that this day, the concept of the attendant to a performance is not valuable again anymore. We have to find some new way, and that is what the new technology will help. Now, what about the creation? Here, we have 2 different kinds of development. The first one is development at the artistic level. One good example is the video used in performing arts. They can be used as an ad, and with the example that was given yesterday of the video of Bill Viola during the Tristan und Isolde at the Teatro Real in Madrid, or they can be used live. You have live performance where the singers are filmed and project on a screen behind the scene that give, for instance, if you have an opera seria with a very long aria when nobody is moving, what the camera is showing is how the other singers are reacting to what is said by the singing actor. And then we have another view of the show. But here, we still are at the artistic level. Second point, we have an effect at the consumer level. So this means that the performance that has been produced may be distributed a lot of ways which are different. First big change, dematerialization. This means that you can sell a cultural product without having a hard copy. A good example, of course, is the e-book regarding normal book. You have a kind of blockbuster effect. Blockbuster exists, of course, for the big film and so on, but is also of application for a lot of cultural activities. And I take one example, all the activity which has made around the museum shops. Third problem is, I already mentioned, is the way that the products are presented in a different presentation, and I was taking the e-books as an example. Another way is to change the canal of distribution. We know that the various elements in the chain of distribution are very costly. If you go with Amazon, this means that you go from the basic distributor directly to the reader. You are normally gaining a lot of money out of it. Following point, what is at sale? Up to now, the idea was I buying the intellectual right linked to the artistic product. Now, you're not buying anymore because you're not receiving anymore in a virtual streaming process, for instance. So this means that you are not buying the right to know, you're just buying the right to listen to. And after you have listened to a performance, it's finished, you cannot have any more. So it's just as if you buy a ticket to a concert, but that you listen to the concert at home. Following point, the difference between what is called entertainment and what is called culture is diminishing tremendously. And this is not necessarily a bad point. Because if you look at the history of performing arts, from the Renaissance to the 19th century, the two were closely linked. It's an invention of the 20th century to write culture with a big K, like in Puck. And then you have the possibility to link product. Everybody knows that the sales of the CD are on the decline. But some people have found out a new way to produce their music. Is Prince in London. He has produced a set of 15 concerts at the same place, a lot of gains of travel costs and so on, with the possibility for the attenders of the concerts to buy the tickets and the CD of the performance they were attending. So this means that after the concert is finished, they just stay for 20 minutes and they receive the CD of the performance they have attended. It's very important because this means they have a direct contact with what they have experienced in the real life. Now, we go to the second type of distribution, is of course broadcasting. That's not new. Radio, TV, have always broadcast performing art. What is new is the dematerialization. The dematerialization is taking place first in the kind of acquired support, secondly in the way of listening, streaming in place of stocking, and then in the way to storage information, because at the end of the day, you even have the information at home. You just include it somewhere, and it's finished. The advantage, of course, is to enjoy a world distribution without the costly physical network. Second advantage, you have a direct link with the real show. When you go to attend a performance of opera at the Met in a cinema, you are exactly in line with the performance in New York, because the performance in New York is happening from 1 o'clock p.m., And if you listen that is Spain, you listen to the performer at 7 o'clock, and you are exactly on the same time as if you have a seat at the Lincoln Center. Third point, the availability of additional and peripheral information. This is very important because there's a strong demand from young generation. And last point, which is also a strong demand from new generation, is interactivity. People want to raise questions about what they're attending, what they are looking at. Now, when you look at this, you say, is it not possible to apply the same kind of products to the education system? I will take the example of we have the theatre of the cinema that was mentioned by your friends yesterday with the Phèdre at the National Theatre in London. I have the example of the operas at the Met. What does it mean, opera at the Met? Opera at the Met is 8 performances per year, direct. It costs more or less $1 million per performance to make the film live and to broadcast that through the satellite and to rent the cinema to do it. Final net result, 11.5 million US dollars. If you have in mind that the production at the Met costs between 2.5 and $4 million, and that the Met is making 8 new productions a year, this means that more or less half of the new production of the Met are paid by the cinema distribution. This is an enormous amount. And then I just take the same idea and I apply it to education system. If you look, and I take the example of theater, and theater of national big writers, Molière, Cervantes, Shakespeare, Pirandello, and so on. If you look at the program of the theaters around the world, and in Belgium it's certainly the case, you have to struggle to find an opportunity for a child between 12 and 18 to attend a performance of a piece by Molière. But they have to study Molière at school. So, what to do? Just imagine that you have in the country a very good performance of Tartuffe of Lavar. What should they do? They make a film of it live on a performance on the Wednesday afternoon, for instance, and they have broadcast in the cinema for all the French-speaking part of Belgium. And then they keep the material so that the material can be used for further performance, can be sent to the school together with some information for the teachers and so on, so that they can prepare the performance and they can follow their course in the class on the basis of the performance they have been attending on the cinema. And at the same time, you can thus give virtual tools for the teacher. You can induce forum of discussion for the pupils who have attended the performance, and going back home, they can use a kind of Facebook to speak together about what they've seen. You can give tools for preparation of personal research at home for them when they have to prepare things for their teacher. You really had the center of the educational process. Last point, but I'll be very quick, control. It's evident that when you have a performance of an opera at the Met with an attendance in the hall of a maximum 3,200 people, it's a very big opera house. Normally an opera house is around 1,200. And when you use a kind of cinema that has as an effect that the number of attendants is from 250,000 for the contemporary opera to 400,000 for each performance. This means that we have an incredible multiplier of the number of people who have the contact with the performance. So this means that the principle of the attendance is not a way to use an adequate statistic approach in order to assess the efficiency of the subsidy delivered. The efficiency of the subsidy delivered is the number of people who have the opportunity to have a contact with this show. I just take the example of theater. This means that we'll have something like 20,000 pupils who have the opportunity to see the piece by Molière. It's incredible. It has never been done, even in Avignon. So, when you say that, my conclusion is to say we have here a topic for future research. First of all, because in general, on a global basis, is a non-attended area. There is place for making good research. Secondly, there is a fantastic demand coming from the user in the cultural world. Everybody wants to know what they can do. Third of all, it's essential to enjoy a kind of comparative international research without the best practice which is conducted in the various countries. The only way to do that is to have collaborators in various countries, and PUC is a base to produce such a group. A base. We know that we need 10 countries, but you need 10 countries. We'll find 10 countries. So, can be that a topic for one of our next program? Do you think we have something to do about creative program? Personally, I think we can. How can we study that? There's a crucial need for international comparison, and this means that we have to make the list of the various topics we want to approach and the country for which we need information on these particular topics because we know that they have some kind of advance in their experience. Secondly, we have to make comparison between what is, I will call, the performing art on one hand and the heritage and museum on the other hand. It's something what people say, these are different approach. We have to look at them separately. More and more, I'm convinced that it's the reverse. If you have a concert hall or a theater hall near an exhibition place, you can make some kind of programming around the exhibition which is made that. You make an exhibition of pieces by Watteau, the French painter, and you organize concert of French music in the next hall. Or you organize a performance of Le Neveu de Rameau by Diderot in the next theater. And you recreate a full event around your exhibition. And we can, of course, use the TV to produce the piece of theater in streaming, and you can give the concert in streaming as well. That being done, it's necessary to make a comparative analysis of the impact. What has been successful or not, for what reason, and in which country, because you may imagine that an attitude is very positive in, let's say, the north of Europe, but will not be applicable if you have to use that on a Mediterranean country or the reverse. And finally, out of that, I think we have a couple, we don't know, I cannot tell you which one. It's too early. We have to make the job to know that. But I'm pretty sure that we may have very clear line of cultural management that we can deliver in a delay of maximum 2 or 3 years. That's the challenge I'm proposing. Now you have the floor.
Thank you, Michel, for this provocative talk, which will certainly raise questions. So who has questions?
Thank you. I found the presentation quite interesting, apart from provocative. And since I completely share your view of, and I think the kind of plan of work you designed is quite interesting. I would add only one point, and the point is, for instance, it is advisable, and maybe there are examples of interactions and joint and partnership and joint ventures or cooperation among different cultural producers, regardless of whether they belong to the performing art areas or heritage or museum areas. Probably in investigation, in international comparison and investigation of best practice, or in designing, at what conditions this could be possible, probably an investigation of the institutional features and constraints, or I would say incentives, which different kind of producers face in different institutional contexts could be useful, because in some cases, and I think of the Italian situation, there are no incentives at all. There will be no reason, apart from being enlightened or long-sighted people, for museum directors, theater directors to engage themselves in such a costly or interesting partnership. On the other hand, it might be risky for them, and if they don't have incentive, why should they care? So in the comparative, in the international comparison, looking at what conditions this could be possible, because this would add something in terms of policy implications which could be of interest for different countries.
I completely agree with you, but there's one problem the control authority should have in hand, is that the future is in their hands, and that is not necessarily costly, provide they mobilize the existing force who can provide the technical experience. I take one example. Radio and TV are on the business for decades. What Met is doing with a private company, because we are in the state, the RAI or France 3 can do it. They do it already in terms of opera, when they try to follow the example of the Met together with the French television. At the moment the film from the French television is available, and you have some films available about opera, you can have films available about theater in Italy through the RAI. At the moment this is available, the cost is decreased tremendously. And if you cannot have all the people attending in the cinema because the broadcasting costs too much, you can still work with a hard copy of the performance to have them to the schools where it will be projected on a big screen. Of course, it's not ideal because you don't have this kind of community. There's something young people like a lot. Why do you think they are going to the pop concert? Because they really like to enjoy a ceremony in common. They want to share. What people are not sharing is culture. We have to find out some way to provoke some participative cultural events. It's very important. And if we do that, a lot of young people will follow, because that's really what they're looking at. So I agree with you, you have a problem, but the problem is not insolvable because we have the tools in our own internal system to do that. The problem is that the objective given by our governments to our local TV is to look at a kind of scoring about the attendance of the TV watchers to see who is the best. But who is the best is the one who has the American police series. I think a public television is also there for something else. Otherwise, why do you have one?
Other questions?
I liked your suggestion of combining experiences, such as having an art exhibition or some exhibition before a opera performance, but or some art performance. But I wonder what's the objective of this combination? Is this to extend the audiences or to bring the experience closer to the individual? Because I just had to think of something a person once said, that having live music during dinner is an offense to both, to the cook and to the performer.
That I agree. But the idea is not to have a concert when visiting the exhibition. The idea is to visit the exhibition, to have a concert in the beginning, at the end, maybe in the middle. You may imagine the way I was suggesting to have a kind of trip through the museum with the games. You can have a trip through the museum with music. But people have to visit at the same time together by groups. But every 20 minutes, somebody will play a piece of cembalo by Rameau because the exhibition is Watteau. And the piece will be 5 minutes. But you have a lot of people who are interested by painting, not necessarily by music, or the reverse. Of course, you have the universal people who know everything about everything, but these are not those for which cultural policy is designed.
Hi, Mine wasn't a question so much as just a comment on what Kyle just said. You were saying that you weren't sure how it would work. I actually went to the Van Gogh Museum one time, and they did have live music playing that evening. It was just a special event, and I actually found it a really nice experience. I think that would be a really nice way to get especially young people involved, college-age students and secondary school students, that having special evenings it was like on a Friday with long hours, and they had just nice music. And I can tell you, I've been there a few times, and there were more young people involved on that evening, where it was a much more informal evening. So I think finding solutions like that, where you're able to combine different, like you were saying, different forms, and I found it a really nice experience, and I look forward to seeing if anyone else has other ideas. So I think what you've said is very nice.
Thank you.
No other questions? Thank you, Michel.